Top of the morning to you, wherever you might be watching us from. My name is Paul Olatupan. Today is a beautiful Sunday, and this is the newspaper review here on Idea TV. Good morning to you once again. It's a beautiful Sunday, and also today is the day we will be expecting the blood moon. That's the lunar eclipse, and hopefully we're able to see it in this part of the world. But wherever you might be watching us from, you could see it in several places, watch it online. It's well seen in places like Cyprus and also some parts of Asia. But quickly we'll go now to the national dailies and see what has been said on the national dailies, starting from the Sunday Independent, the most read newspaper among the political and also the business elites. That's what they call themselves. Quickly we'll take a look at what has been said on this paper this morning, starting from the window story here on page 3. Is a story of Simon Ekpa's conviction has no bearing on Nnamdi Kanu's trial. That is what lawyers and also activists are saying this morning. And also, I will go on to page 4 as well, is still on independence, is Ebola outbreak as Nigeria is on high alert, tightening security and also activate emergency response. And also on page 4 is a story of how visa revocation by the U.S. government won't affect bilateral relations. That's what experts are saying also on page 4. Meanwhile, on page 5 is a story of gunmen on rampage in states in Edo as they killed 8 NSCDC officials and also kidnap expatriate. Adopt Edo line bus, Camry passenger on Benin Akure Highway. 7 dead as many injured in Katsina bandit attack. And also the big story here is the story from the Aso Rock saying that concerns items over Aso Rock's increasing recourse to propaganda. Analysts fault President Tinubu's claim to end corruption. Pick holes in declaration of being fair to Nigeria. I guess I'll start from that. It's a story of Ebola outbreak right there. We've seen that in DRC Congo, there's been an outbreak of Ebola virus once again, and so now the government are trying to tighten the borders as we do not want to experience what we experienced some years back. I guess that was sometimes in between 2015 and 2016 here in Nigeria, where we had where we were almost like on a lockdown actually with the Ebola virus outbreak here in Nigeria, and which lasted for just about 93 days. And thanks to the fact that we also swept into swift action, and we were able to curb that virus. And also it left us alone basically under 93 days, under 100 days, and it is a very wonderful one. And it's nice to see that the NCDC, that's the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, they are on their feet again at this time around, and obviously they're going to be checking our borders, probably checking all the places, countries close to DRC Congo. It's expected that they try to tighten the security as regards that, actually when they are having flights from there, check to ensure that there's no. I do understand as well that this particular strain of the virus is actually a very strong one. It's very potent actually. And also there's also the story of from Aso Rock. They're talking about how Tinubu's claims to end corruption. It's critics are just saying that it is a lie, that there's nothing, that it's not corruption they're trying to curb and all of that. It's just a slippery slope, going back and forth as regards. And also there's also the issue of propaganda, as they accuse Aso Rock of continually relying on propaganda, and also some claims that are not actually factual. However, it's expected that in the coming days you'll see probably more light as regards this, and also, critics won't stop talking in the real sense. And also, Tinubu's administration has always been claiming to be treating Nigerians with all fairness and all of that. And also, they are claiming that it's not treating Nigerians with all fairness. I guess there's no particular, how do I call it? There is no way to actually know, but it's in this in this story they mentioned the fact that the several regions, especially in the southeast and also some parts of the north, are few marginalized. They say that infrastructure allocation is imbalanced, as southeast and also northeast have received the least, and also the sense of unfairness fails as activation, and also I feel there's obviously a political tension underneath it, and it's very, I mean, it's a lot that is to be said here. And I think sometime last week as well, the government was in the news for saying that they are not being fair to all citizens, that they're not doing justice to a few things, talking about infrastructure and also allocation of budget and all of that. But the point here still remains that, you see, all of these things, there's no way to actually put it in scale, basically. And also, in fact, funny enough, according to a report from last week as well, it was the Northeast that has received the largest of all of these things, and now they're coming out to say that the Northeast is receiving least. Oh, let's see how facts and also figures, and also we're expecting all of these regional development commissions actually to kick off work. Probably once they kick off work, we'll see more balance as regards this. But quickly move on now to the Sunday Times, that's Sunday edition of the Daily Times there, to see what is being said right there. Okay, now on page 10 of the Sunday Times is church leaders join Muslims to celebrate in Kaduna. That's on page 10. And on page 7, I am committed to removing Tinubu from office, says Stambua. That's on page 7 of Sunday Times this morning. Meanwhile, on page 4, over 30 terrorists neutralized in Borno by NAF strike. That is the National Air Force. They were able to neutralize over 30 terrorists, and that's on page 4. On page 5, we see here that police rescue 16 kidnapped passengers in Edo as 13 remain in captive. That's on page 5 of the Sunday dailies. And on page 2, the world is stronger, more just, more hopeful when women lead. That is what Inedi Usman, that's the former Minister of State for Finance and also in interim chairman of the Labour Party. That's what she said at a particular event, the leadership initiative graduation, and that's the picture they were seeing on the front page of this screen this morning. And on page 2, it says that gunmen kill 8 NSCDC personnel at Boa Cement Company as they adopt expatriates. The story of insecurity is really, really sad. But also on page 2 as well, Labour Party, APC trade word over Tinubu's vacation on page 2. And finally on page 7, autopsy on remains of 22-year-old Moses killed at Governor Otu's residence underway, says police. As regards insecurity, we've been seeing cases day in, day out as regards policemen being kidnapped, being shot, gun attack here, gun attack there. And it's really sad to see things like this pan out, throughout our country, throughout every region. I mean, every region basically is facing a fair share of all of these things. And really, it's not so, nice in the real sense. Also, we have the story of how church leaders join Muslims to celebrate Eid Malud, and it's really nice to see, the community coming together as one, not divided by faith or tribe or whatever it might be. And also, the story of the autopsy of the remains that was found at Governor Otis' house. It is. There's a lot to be said as regards that, but however, I'd love to probably just mention the fact that there's an autopsy in Lagos that has been on the way for quite a while now, and there has been no subtle result as regards finding cause of death and things like that. Hopefully, there's a cause of death for this time, for this particular one this time around. And now move on now to the Sunday Punch, where we see here on page 4 that UK removal threats as they threaten Nigerian students who scramble for work visas. That's on page 4. And on page 26, it says that mother rejects 5 million after Cross River police killed son. Death for preaching. And also on page 3, the countdown begins as Fubara supports base 1 ahead of the 11-day return. Meanwhile, NCOS reveals Nasarawa Osun escape inmates' identities. That's the National Correctional Center. And also, we see here that how social media agents traffic Nigerian girls into Saudi slave trade. That's on page 4. Also, we see on page 10 that NCDC activates plans against Ebola threat. That's on page 10 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And on page 24, we see here that Lagos residents drown in soaring rent amidst weak housing policy. And then there's a picture of a lady who claims that a landlord just increased my rent from 350,000 to 700,000 in just 1 year. And then on page 16 and also 17, talk about Lagos supermarket exposed. Lagos supermarket selling expired groceries to shoppers. That's on page 16 and 14 is a big story there. And finally on page 3, we see here the story of the looming strike. 4 marketers beg Tinubu to avert Monday strike. That's on page 3 of the Punch newspaper this morning. As looming danger must be stopped, says Petron and also IPAN. Nigerian workers cannot be abused without consequences. That is on page 3 this morning, and that's what NLC is saying. Well, yesterday, the 4 marketers were in the Nupeng actually was in the news talking about how Ali Code and one other party now are trying to monopolize the PMS market, trying to control what exactly goes on, and they are saying that they won't take that anymore. That is becoming too much on them. But you know, with the way things have been panning out lately, I would, from my own point of view, right, I would say that it's more about where, you know, now there's someone who is actually doing what is right, and then some people are feeling the brunt of it, and then now they are coming to say that they are going on strike. But however, tomorrow we'll know if they'll still be going on strike. Well, if they're begging, I feel like the person that they should be begging at the moment as well shouldn't be Tinubu, but rather the vice president who is currently sitting in for the president. That's Shetima, because he is currently holds the power to probably avert such a strike. Also, we see the story of how mother rejects money for the death of her son. I mean, there's no amount that would pay for the loss of a child, and you know, it's really sad to see something like this happening once again. And finally, on the UK policy shift, you know, over the years now, especially with the stories of people like Badenoch, there has been so many UK policy shifts with, you know, several of that, with post-study work visa shortened from 2 years to just 18 months. You know, the new rule says that students visas holders can no longer switch to skilled worker visas on shortage occupation list after that's since after July 2025. Also, Nigerian students are experiencing a lot, as there's a report about Nigerian students as immigration keeps changing the rule. You know, over this year, for example, I think the rule has been changed for like 3 times or thereabouts. And also, we're seeing here that some have transitioned into some who have transitioned into skilled work visas as well are facing uncertainty. And there's a quote here that says that it's not with the crippling inflation, crime, and also lackadaisical attitude of our leaders. If you taste the working system, you cannot look back. And that's what one of the students was saying. But it's a whole lot, you know, and there has been reaction there from several places. Someone, that's Teniola Jayolas, who is a student in the UK, says that UK reinforcing existing rule, but risk alienation genuine students. This move aims to reduce the record net migration. And also, a professor from Osun State University says that UK's approach is explorative, likened to 419, and it also takes foreign students money, gives degree, then expel them from the country. Well, it's because again, foreign students actually paid a very large sum of amount to study in all of these universities. We're going to quick break now. Once you're back, we'll continue with what's on the front pages of our newspapers. We still have about 2 more papers to review. We'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back. This is still the newspaper review here on Idea TV, where we bring ideas and also bring innovation into action. Moving on now, we're going now to another newspaper, looking from the Sunday Telegram, and we see at the face of the man behind the tax reform. That's Oyedele. It says that 5% fuel tax not introduced by Tinubu, says that January's date not sacrosanct. That is what he's saying. That's Taiwo Oyedele. And also, that's on page 3 of the Telegraph. A writer here says that it will worsen poverty in 2026. That's what Man and also CSO are saying this morning. Meanwhile, on page 5, Trump threatens sanction against detention of U.S. nationals abroad. That's on page 5. Meanwhile, we see here on page 6 that Rep. Kofa sacks NNPP and also sues for deal default. Meanwhile, Wale Edo on page 5 says that federal government is committed to reforms and also to reform deliverables. That's on page 5. Meanwhile, on page 14 and 19, we see that asking Jonathan to run in 2027 is mischievous and embarrassing. That is what Okore is saying this morning. Meanwhile, on page 2, we see that NNCDC has how government killed 8 officers and also adopted expatriates. It saddens, says the Boa Group. Also, we see here on page 4, the 2023 Electricity Act review. NAS to scrap Band A, Band B, Band C, and Band D tariff categories. Plans are unconstitutional, illegal, says OPS and also NERC. That's the National Electric something Commission now, chairman. And others. Meanwhile, lawmakers say that law causing conflict in power sector. That's on page 4. And now on the big story here on the Sunday Telegraph is a story of litigation, as they say that PDP may not have candidates in 2027. That's what ex-governor is saying. Says that issues should not be about Wiki. Well, I guess Wiki has been the one that's been troubling the party because yesterday as well, it was also in the news as regards PDP as well. And it's funny how just one man can change the party and can destroy the party like this. And also, move on quickly to the story of Taiwo Oyedele, where he's talking about January's date is not sacrosanct, meaning that the reforms might not kick off from January. That's a new thing again. And also, is saying that the 5% fuel tax was not introduced by Tinubu. And the question remains that who actually introduced this particular thing, if it's not the current president that introduced it. Well, I expected to see more stories as regards this as time goes on. And also, Wale Edo talks about how federal government is committed, to ensuring that Nigerians meet the reforms and also the reforms are being delivered appropriately to Nigerians. Well, let's see how much, because I know there have been so much of reforms and we expect that they all yield results, hopefully, And also, let's finally move on to the last paper of the day, the Sunday Tribune. That's where we have a story from Ekiti here on page 6 saying that Oyebanji must return to complete his good work in Ekiti. That is what APC is saying on page 6 this morning. And also on page 5, we see here that floods, 231 Nigerians die, 114 missing, over 100,000 displaced in 8 months. That is what NEMA is saying on page 5. Meanwhile, on page 4, we see that Boko Haram attacks Borno village as they kill 61 persons. Air Force and also ground troop neutralized 45 terrorists in Borno and Katsina. On page 8, we see that Unilag don't land in trouble for alleged raping 20-year-old students. That's on page 8. Meanwhile, on page 6, it says that APC Labour Party in war of words over Tinubu's vacation. Nigeria cannot afford a nomadic president. That is what Labour Party is saying. Meanwhile, APC says that president's vacation has not affected governance in any way. That's what it's been said. Meanwhile, on page 11 and also 19, it says that polity. It says that Yoruba nation under threat. Yoruba groups claims says our land are being taken over. Analysis says that how lack of population figure affects Nigerian development. That's on page 11 and also page 19. And finally, on page 4, the big story, we see a showdown looms over Nupeng's strike order. That's on page 4 as NLC backs petroleum workers plan to stool down on Monday. Meanwhile, IPAN asks members to shut down operation. And also tankers driver urge members to ignore strike notice. And that's on the Sunday Tribune. It's a good news as regards how the Air Force was able to, neutralize a number of terrorists in Borno and also and also Katsina. It's really wonderful news. It's good to hear. We want to see more of things like that, and also seeing people return to their settlement. And also on the issue of flood, it's been in the news that we should be expecting flood. There might be more floods even before the end of the year, as reports keeps pointing to, and we've seen all of this. I mean, just in the last 8 months, over 100 persons have been displaced. And when we talk about 100,000 persons being displaced, it's not just about them moving from one place to another because of flood. It's also meaning that their source of income most likely might also might have stopped. There are students not going to school as well in some cases, and all of these things. But it's a lot actually to take in, and these reports are not good. But the only thing that we have to do now, and we can do now, is to have more plans to reduce the effect of all of these things, so that even when they happen, we're able to accommodate them, we're able to sweep into action quickly. Let's see how all of these things pan out at the end of the day. I mean, there was a particular report from the Office of the Vice President as regards how we should be expecting flood in almost all local government areas at least once or twice before the year runs out. And now we're in the last 8 months, we've seen all of this play out. I guess that's all we'll be able to take this morning on the newspaper review. Do not forget to like and also engage on all of our social media platforms, just as displayed on your screen, and also our websites on the screen. My name remains Paul Olatpo. Thanks for watching Idea TV newspaper review. Bye for now.